My name is Afalista Wamboi Abdallah. I am a sex worker from here, Kenya. When we talk about biasness, there's a lot of biasness when it comes to issues to do with women. And many of the women don't consider us sex workers to be women. So I think this time we should be real. And we are asking this question again to all the women's movement and the women's leaders. Aren't we also women?
My name is Penina Mwangi. What I'd like to say, sex workers have not always been part of the broader women movement. We never used to celebrate this day because we thought it's for certain women.
One of the barriers that have really called out to the UN Women help us break, we can empower the women across the border. The sex workers women across the border are able to articulate their issues, they are able to express themselves, they are able to fight for their rights. It will be a very good initiative.
My name is Memories Ondega Chamwa. I am calling for breaking the bias against African women and girls, regardless of their age, their sexual orientation, their economic status, or geographic location.
My name is Elizabeth Atieno Onyango. As a young sex worker, I am really thankful for the women organizations that have been there before us, paving the way for us to stand here today and advocate for inclusion of women in every space where decisions are being made. As sex workers, we have been structurally marginalized for a very long time. And with this theme, we can actually use it to advocate for sex workers' inclusion in other women's spaces.
My name is Jedida Maina. I would like to call for the breaking of all bias and discrimination on all women and girls, especially in relation to accessing sexual and reproductive health services.
My name is Grace Nyarat. International Women's Day is a day that we commemorate to see the achievement that we've made as women, both socially, economically, culturally, and politically.
My name is Nicole Undisa. The International Women's Day calls for gender equality among women and also inclusivity.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Okoth. The challenges that sex workers are facing, the biggest one is violence.
My name is Caroline Joroge. With this year's theme, which is breaking the bias, we call on all women sex workers to remember that sex workers are also women.
Breaking the bias. The biasness is the fact that sex workers are denied opportunities. Sex workers are denied funding when it comes to women. Sex workers are denied spaces when it comes to women. We want to be women, we want to feel like women, and we want to be treated like women.
We would like to be funded as women organization to be part of the bigger women's movement in partnership with other women in order to realize the coalition goal number 6, which is bringing women together to form a strong movement. We should be part of the women's organization because we have similar agenda. We go through similar challenges.
I'm calling for the accountability towards the intentional implementation and resourcing of gender equality policies and commitments. We must connect struggles and collectively disrupt oppressive systems and structures and create a safe space for African women and girls in all their diversity to live dignified lives and thrive.
For the opportunities that I'd like to see for young female sex workers like myself, I'd like for spaces where we can actually be innovative and express our creativity in leadership, our creativity in advocacy, and bring up new ideas towards shaping the movement.
Still, we must work on issues on how to break the bias on gender equality. And more so when we go up to women's movement, we have women who have been structurally secluded, mostly as sex workers. We want to break the bias of all things. We have been excluded from the movement.
This is a very good theme, but how are we putting it into practice by making sure that women who are sex workers are included in spaces, are included in funding, are included in making decisions when it comes to women's issues? Because our issues seems to be very different and deep, which needs an understanding of a sex worker who is sitting on the table to be able to make those decisions on behalf of other sex workers.
When it comes to climate change affecting us, it affects us, all of us as Kenyans, all of us as global citizens, all of us as Africans, and all of us as women. And that is why we ask for support to be able to curtail these challenges, to be part of the larger women's society. Now, sex workers are also affected by sexual and reproductive health. This is never mentioned. This is never funded. We're only funded for HIV.
I look at structural barriers in so many ways. Other women speak about economic empowerment. Other women just speak largely on how to empower women. Sex workers are actually facing highly violence because in many of our countries, sex work is actually criminalized. Violence is part of us every day, every time. We've not seen women coming out to speak and shouting together with us. We see women talking about violence against other women. Why is this not including the sex workers into that advocacy? We are saying togetherness advocacy is going to bring change.
All we need is funding to support access of documentation so that when they go even to report the cases of violence, no one takes advantage of them. Then we'll have broken the biasness across the border.
For a very long time, women movements have been really doing selective activism where other women were being left behind. Women who were being left behind, especially sex workers, female drug users, LBQ and transgender women. As a young sex worker in leadership, I'd like to see a more intersectional advocacy where all these issues can be integrated and where we can all do intersectional advocacy to ensure change in our different communities. Sex workers, we are constantly faced by different challenges. The most intersectional challenge is financial insecurity. As sex workers, it is very hard for us to gain access into other economic opportunities. Thing that I'd like to see change is the issues around financial insecurity, to also gain financial literacy through different trainings on how to save, how to invest. We don't usually save maybe for retirement. As sex workers, these are opportunities maybe to go work. We do not think about what is coming next.
We live in a society that does not recognize that women fully own their bodies. It is quite unfortunate that even as we are striving to achieve the SDGs, and to fulfill our constitutional promise to access the highest attainable standard of health, many women and girls remain behind, especially those of us who are seen to be different because of our identity, race, ethnicity, social status, HIV status, occupation and ability.
We have women who have been sidelined. These are the sex workers and LBQ women. We need to be given the spaces, the planning, limitation, and evaluation of the processes.
In this, we ask all funders and donors to fully invest in funding sex workers-led movements as collaborators and not competitors. Fully ensure that sex workers are also part of the realization of the Action Coalition Goal 6 on having a strong feminist movement and leadership across all women in all their diversities.
We as sex workers, we would like to be empowered economically because as a sex worker, there's no way I can access a loan at the bank. We have doctors, women who are running other businesses. This should be the same case as for me as a sex worker. If that can be given an opportunity to us as sex workers so that we can be able to overcome the structural barriers that we have.
To see more inclusion of sex workers and sex work movements, I look at inclusion as the major factor that will spark conversations around decriminalization of sex work, existing punitive laws that criminalizes sex work, decriminalization of sex work.
My call to action to address structural barriers of women in sex work and fully support decriminalization of sex work in Kenya.
There's a lot of funding for women when it comes to structural interventions. Let's talk about climate change. We see women receiving all these fundings. These are not the kind of fundings that we get as sex worker. If the climate is changing, it means the nature of my work is also changing. If women are being empowered economically, it means I also need to be empowered economically so that I can start thinking about my retirement plan.
Changing the narrative that include sex workers in developmental projects, include sex workers in spaces where decisions are being made, include sex workers in politics, include sex workers in legal debates. For a very long time, people have been speaking for us, leading to half-truths and untold truths.
I would like to call for the removal of all barriers, including structural barriers placed on women and girls that hinder the access to the highest attainable reproductive health services.
Sex workers' lives are women's lives. Sex workers are women. Sex workers are mothers. Sex workers are wives. Sex workers are sisters. We belong to the women's movement. Sex workers are feminists too.
Sex workers do it better.
We have the capability of taking leadership. Young women, we are here to take up the spaces, and we are hoping for the support of the world.
We're calling upon the funders to fund our networks so that our issues can be articulated well by us sex workers.
#BreakTheBias.